I have to admit, when Brent asked me a few weeks ago if I wanted to speak this evening or this afternoon, he said, we're going to have all the young men do the service after dinner. So I wasn't sure if he's referring to me as one of the young men or nobody else would do it, or I don't know. But yeah, so I told him a while back that I had an idea of a lesson that I've been trying to put together for a while, and then he finally asked me, so I was forced to put it together. And so the title of this is called The Weakest Links, with the S, or weakest link, whatever you want to put. But and we know that when Jesus was here on earth, that he liked to teach in parables. So a parable is just a simple story used to tell or illustrate a moral or spiritual lesson. So part of this lesson is going to be my interpretation of a parable. So when you hear someone say the weak link or weakest link, what's the first thought that comes to your mind? Right? It probably is something to do with a negative connotation at some point, right? Somebody is not up to par, somebody is just not as good as the rest of you, or, you know, so at one point or another, I feel that everybody has been touched by the weakest link or the weak link. So what does it mean to be the weak link? So it means from that the whole entity is only as strong as its weakest point, right? So whether it be out of a physical chain that you would use to pull something, a car or whatever, that chain is only going to be as strong as that weakest link is before it withstands too much pressure and breaks, right? It also can be used to refer to maybe a team member or a coworker that is not as strong or as valuable as everybody else on the team. So it's just a different way for people to kind of judge other people, if you ask me, right? We kind of say that for a nice way to just kind of pass judgment on somebody. Oh, they're just the weak link, right? Basically, you're telling them they're not as good. So I want you to think first point, I want you to think of a time. Have you ever been considered to be a weak link in anything? You don't have to answer or anything like that or raise your hand, but I was talking to Susan about it, and I asked her the same question, and she said, yes, absolutely, that when she was young and she was on a bowling team, and she knew that she was the weakest link on that bowling team. Now, whether her teammates made her feel that way or if it was true, I don't know. I didn't ask her because I just wanted to know her thought on it, because I thought maybe it was just me. That I know I was referred to as a weak link one time. I was on a football team when I was in high school, and I wasn't the strongest. I wasn't the fastest. I wasn't the angriest person, and so I couldn't run the ball because I was too slow. I was too easy to be blocked, so I wasn't able to play on defense. So where could they put me, right? I've been playing football my whole life, and so I ended up being the center, the middle of the offensive line. Believe it or not, I was the smallest one. I was maybe 175 pounds in high school. But I had something that was going for me that nobody else on the line had. I was smart, and I knew I was smart. I was intelligent. So what happened is our coach put blocking schemes together to help. Double teams, different pooling, things like that. But what was where I came into was because some of the other guys really had a hard time remembering what they needed to do. They couldn't remember blocking schemes. They didn't know whether they were supposed to double team. They couldn't do anything. So just to backtrack a little bit, these inabilities that I had actually earned me the nickname Nothing, a play on Nathan, right? And it started with the head coach, and every person called me that. But I didn't let it bother me. Yeah, I see Jeanette's face over here. She's appalled, but that's okay, because like right through adversities, we're able to be built up. So we'll have a positive ending. So just hold with me there, Jeanette. I could have given up. I could have quit, but my dad wouldn't let me. So what do? We figure out a way, right? So they tried to bench me a game, and we had more penalties than we've ever had. We lost by 20 points. We just didn't have the film that we watched for it was absolutely horrible. Blocking schemes missed, anything else. So they put me back in. And my job was to make sure everybody else knew what their job was to do. And that's what I did. And I did it to the best that I could, right? I wasn't as strong, I wasn't as fast, but I knew I was smarter. And it actually paid off in the end, because I won Student Athlete of the Year for my senior year for our high school. So, I mean, now granted, all them other guys were only C students, maybe lower than that, but I still did it anyway. I don't know. I never really associated with any of them ever again. We're not going to go there, but anyway. But I knew that I can use something for my advantage, right? And that's what I did. So now I want you to think of a time, and this is where my parable comes in, on a man that I met named Fred Gibbs, okay? This is a time that I want you to think that you considered somebody a weak link or a weakest link. If you have, maybe you haven't. God bless you if you've never had to deal with it, right? To give you some context, so I was in the military. I was an E4, which was a corporal, and I had just started my second year in Okinawa. So Okinawa, you get orders to go. You either go for 1 year or 3 years. 1 if you go alone, 3 if you have a family and you want to bring them over there. You have to take them with you. I liked it so much I stayed there another year. But we were getting ready to have another group of people come in for their 1 year. And there was a man named Fred Gibbs. So part of my job was to do these initial interviews with these Marines when they came in, to figure out what they were about. You know, where they're from, what did they do, strengths, weaknesses, abilities, read their orders, read their record books, all that good stuff, just to know. And I can brief our platoon commander on what we were getting in, you know, because you kind of know, if anybody's ever done a resume for somebody applying for a job, you kind of know what their strengths, what their weaknesses are, things like that. My very first question I asked Fred Gibbs is why he decided to join the Marine Corps. And he said, because I got into some trouble, and I was told by a judge, I either go to the service or I go to jail. That was his choice. And then at that conversation, at that point, because in my opinion, he was a weak link. I don't think I even paid attention to the rest of that conversation, because I really don't remember any other details than what he said to me about why he joined the Marines. So going forward, about 6 months after that, our platoon got tasked with serving on kitchen patrol, which is you just go to the chow hall and you work. Basically, the only full-time chow hall employees were cooks, so they needed people to do serving, cleaning, all that other good stuff that the cooks couldn't do. So me being the corporal and the platoon sergeant, I got to pick what I wanted to do. So I let everybody pick their jobs. And Fred Gibbs picked what we called the pot shack, which was basically the dishwasher. He cleaned all the dishes, and then before dishes were dirty, they had to peel potatoes. Now, if you don't know anything about that, this is basically a job that is very tedious, and it was actually used for a punishment most of the time. Fred Gibbs was assigned that job because he was pretty much the lowest man on the totem pole. And what job did I take? I took the pot shack, because there was no way that I was going to let some bad link ruin my reputation, my platoon commander's reputation, or my unit's reputation. So I wanted to make sure that I could keep an eye on them. Now, was I passing judgment? Of course I was passing judgment. Did I think for sure that I was passing judgment? Yeah, I knew that I was better than Fred Gibbs. I was there longer. I worked harder. My platoon commander loved me. I was building credibility within my unit. People knew who I was, and I knew I was a better person. So throughout the week in the pot shack, now you're there from like 4 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. You serve 3 meals a day. You're the only ones working. I was in that pot shack peeling potatoes, or I was cleaning pots with Fred Gibbs. But I also got to talk to Fred Gibbs for a week, for many hours a day. By the end of that week, my opinion was totally changed. 100% totally changed about him. See, he had gotten in with the wrong crowd, and it was kind of a one wrong place at the wrong time situation, right? So I won't share with you because it's not right to tell what happened, but by the time it was all said and done, I was getting ready to leave. I was there 3 years. Fred stayed. He was there for about 2 years. We were very close. We became pretty good friends as much as we could because he was in E3, I was in E5, and we weren't really allowed to fraternize all the time. But I knew him. I knew I could trust him to do something if I asked him to. And I had to do exit interviews. So when I did my exit interview, I went through, and I finally came to him, and I had shared with him what I thought about him when I first met him. Sorry. It's the only time I've ever told somebody that I'm not in their family, that I love them, and that I would trust my life in his hands no matter what. I don't know why. I practiced this 100 times. I don't know why I'm upset. But anyway, my opinion was wrong, right? He wasn't a weak link. We all have strengths. We all have weaknesses. And together, we work together to become the best collective unit we can. You know, a long time ago, they called it a melting pot. They don't like to call it a melting pot anyway because you put everybody in the melting pot, it all cooks together, and you kind of absorb the same flavor. It's more like a tossed salad, right? Where like everybody goes in, but you keep your basic flavor, and you find a way to make it work. So that's what Fred Gibbs passed away a few years ago, and I found out on Facebook. And there was a bunch of us that we were stationed with, and everybody was talking for several hours about how he did different things and touched their lives. And it was pretty touching for somebody that was a weak link at one time. Was told, you either go to jail or you go to the military. So the third part of the lesson that I have is think about when Jesus came to earth and he knew what he was coming for. He was the only perfect link ever to step foot on this planet Earth. And the only link that we have to make it to God and to heaven. So therefore, we're all weak links, if you think about it. In one way or another, we're all weak links. Think about it even more when Jesus was with the 12 apostles, and he chose these people to go out and help spread his word. And they were in the Last Supper, and he told them that one of you are going to betray me. He told the 12 that. He knew from the beginning that even his closest confidants on earth, that one of them was going to turn on him and betray him. So we can't change God's salvation. There's nothing that we can do in our lives here on earth that will ever change God's salvation. So when we're talking about weak links, we're talking about ourselves and others around us, everybody in this building. And we are all tasked to kind of help each other to get to heaven, if you think about it. Ultimately, it's ourselves that are going to answer for it. But we're told to help each other. So if we're all arm in arm and we're starting to struggle a little bit, everybody else can kind of help pull you in, even if your arms are coming apart. It's only to the point where you totally break that it matters. As long as you hold on while you're on earth, you do what you're supposed to, we help each other, and we fight as much as we can, no matter if we're weak links or not, we'll make it to heaven. Think of it this way as well. If you would look at a chain, a physical chain, and you had all these links within this chain, and they're all silver, they're all clean, polished, maybe have a little bit of lubrication on them, and one link was rusted, a little off color, maybe kind of thinned out a little bit, and you took that chain out and you tied it to something and you pulled it, who thinks that you can probably guess what link's going to break, right? You probably can. In this circumstance, we're going to say we can. You never know. It might be a different one, but you just never know. But we're going to just say for all intents and purposes that we know that that one's going to break. Our spiritual lives are no different than having weak links in our own spiritual lives that we need to perform maintenance on. So you can fix that weak link, or that link that's a little off color. You can take the rust off, polish it up, lubricate it, make it look just like the rest of the chain, right? We have to do the same thing. We all have weak links in our lives, individually. Our sins are considered our weak links. See, your weak link might be that you just have no belief in Jesus. Your weak link might be depression. It could be materialism, corruption, or, greed for worldly things. It could be adultery, fornication, pornography, immoral thoughts, anger, swearing, bad temper. Maybe it's alcoholism. Maybe it's drug addiction. So the first thing we need to do before we start determining who the weak links of the chains are is we need to make sure that we fix our weak links. Because until I fix my weak links, I have no right to call anybody a weak link, especially somebody that I have only met for 2 minutes in my life and I pegged as a bad person. Right? So where do we get the maintenance manual? Of course, it's the Bible. The ultimate maintenance manual to fix whatever ailment you have. People don't know it, and I don't talk to people about it a lot, but I have been diagnosed with some mental issues. I have a little bit of anxiety and depression that I've been dealt with, like that I've been told that the doctors I have, and I fight with it every day. It happens. But I fight with it, and there's many places in the Bible that will help you deal with it. Psalms has a lot of great places to deal with mental anguish. I'm telling you, and there's one in there specifically, and I just can't remember the name. What it just says, within my anxieties, I find strength in Christ or in God. I use that all the time. You just never know. You never know who you're dealing with. You never know what you're dealing with. But if you deal with yourself first, and you make yourself a good link, then we can help each other become better links. How else do we fix our lives or perform maintenance? Through prayer, right? First and foremost, you probably should pray about it, and then maybe seek some guidance in each other. There's nothing wrong with reaching out to fellow humans if you're having a bad time. There's nothing in the Scripture that tells you not to tell people that you have problems. The third is the Bible. Read the Bible, apply the Bible, however you want to see fit. So, we have to examine ourselves, and we have to be thankful for the weak links in our lives. Because what we heard it before, that Dylan read, in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, sorry I didn't write it down. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, and difficulties. For when I'm weak, I am strong. Sounds like somebody in the Bible knew that we were going to be filled with weaknesses. But if we know how to take our weaknesses, apply it to your lives, and fix it, it becomes strengths. So some of you may have been baptized and have fallen away, and you might need prayers of the church. Or some of you might be thinking that it's time to be baptized and become part of the Lord's church. You're encouraged to do that now. And if it's because you're embarrassed to be in front of people, or you're scared to let people know that you have problems, I'm telling you, I'm standing up here telling you I have problems, and there's not anybody in this building that wouldn't stand up here and tell you the same thing. You're not alone. So don't wait any longer. If you have any need, please come forward as we stand and as we sing.